see, something doesn't feel like it's right, but I guess we are. Okay.
I don't have a windscreen.
My color's weird. I'm blue. Why am I blue? What's that about?
I don't see you blue.
Oh, usually much more.
I'll see it. I like that shirt on you, though.
That's probably what's doing it. It's the red shirt. It's making my colors look weird. All right. No, we should be doing a podcast, right? So I'll go ahead and do that. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Android App Addicts episode 500. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the 500 mark. Many podcasts don't make it to the 50 mark. We've made it to the 500 mark, and I am super proud to have been a part of that. My name is Mark, sometimes known as the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockrell, and joining me, as always, are the people you're really here to see. That's the Eric Arduini, the great one, the manager, the executive, and Steve, the DoorToDoorGeek McLaughlin. Hey, gentlemen.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for introducing the 500th episode, man. This is so exciting. I've been telling everybody at work, and at least they now know what a podcast is. It took 500 episodes, but people actually at this point in 2018 can acknowledge that it's something. They may have never heard one, but they've heard other people talk about them at least now. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. And I wonder how much we owe to, the Big Bang Theory and Sheldon's Fun with Flags podcast as to why more people know what a podcast is.
I know probably at least, that confirmed that my podcasting I talked about was real to at least one person when he said it.
That's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All it did was confirm to my wife that I am a nerd because I was doing it before him.
There's a lot of things you were doing before him.
Well, considering he's not real and he's a fictitious character, yes. I think that's safe to say. Except play the piano. In real life, he's really good at playing the piano. He's a pianist.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the canned laughter in that show. I'd love to watch it if they could just edit all that out or not put it in to begin with.
Well, I hate to tell you, then you wouldn't laugh. You would think the show's really creepy and weird.
Right? How would you know that a joke is funny if the producers don't tell you?
There are other shows out there that are funny that don't do that, and I like watching those. I don't miss any jokes really that I know of. Maybe I'm missing a lot of jokes. I don't know, but they really need to earn their laughter. It comes, That's just the way I see it.
I know it's such a staple. I don't know if anybody actually needs it anymore, but it's just the expected thing.
If it was filmed in front of a live studio audience, then okay, there's going to be some people who can't control themselves sitting in the audience. I think that's where it began, but then, inviting all them people in, you got to feed them lunch and all that stuff. It costs too much money. So the laugh track came, and I don't know.
Well, I'm happy to say this show is 100% laugh track free.
And joke free, usually. There's not much laughter from either side of the microphones or the headphones.
There would have been a inserted laugh right there, just, if it was.
I prefer the clown horn.
I bet I could find within the confines of this show, like while you're talking about it now, I could probably find a laugh track soundboard and provide that.
I'm sure I could have one installed on my app, on my phone, and playing it right into this microphone in less than 2 minutes.
Let's not test those boundaries, please.
It's the 500th episode. This is, I don't know, like the cusp of something new and laugh tracky.
It's on the cusp of episode 501.
Yeah, you're true.
I will first say, this is the show on the network I swore that would be the shortest and run out of stuff to talk about the soonest and become mundane and without point very quickly.
When the show started, though, it wasn't a guaranteed, that it wasn't guaranteed that the iPhone wouldn't take over everything and that BlackBerry wouldn't really kick the crap out of Android. At the time, we weren't sure of that.
Wow. There's no comment to that, but I'm just going to let that go.
No, there was screaming upstairs.
Okay.
I'll just put it like this. When the show started, the platform was unbelievably immature, very clunky, very unpolished, very difficult to do anything. Rooting and ROMing was a very popular phrase because it was needed. We had such low functionality, and most of the people were more nerdy than less. So we wanted more control, more power, more abilities, and we didn't have them. Now, Android has gingerly went up to such a pace where I don't think a huge majority of the users do any rooting or any ROMing whatsoever unless they absolutely feel like they have to.
Yeah, it's been a while since I did. I do have some older, devices, but I just, that I'd like to. And actually, I've got an old S3 that's still rooted with Gummy, and I just don't know if I can unroot it and move it to something else. I'd have to relearn all that again, and I don't know if I would find anything new enough to replace it that would be worth doing.
When Android first got its start, I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the G1. That's not even the modern Android, but like the first Android phone that most people knew, and it was the first one that I had, was the Google Nexus 1. It needed a lot of help, and so Samsung and Motorola and those guys put all these skins in there to provide features, because they were going up against BlackBerry primarily. Android, iPhone, yes, but really their major competition was BlackBerry, and it was such a mature OS, and it had really impressive feature set that Android just didn't have. And the unfortunate double side to that sword was that while Samsung produced their TouchWiz UI, it filled in a lot of the gaps, but it also created a lot of crap. And that's where the rooting and ROMing thing came about. It's like, we recognize Android isn't there, but we don't trust Samsung and Motorola to produce it for us. So let's do it ourselves. And today, Android is there. It's just not missing anything. I haven't rooted my last 3 phones just because I haven't needed to.
Yeah, and I'll say the biggest thing that rooting and ROMing did was it set a flag up and it told Google, these are the features that people want. These are the features that people like. And they got to see people in open communities develop things that they didn't even maybe think of, and saw people gravitate towards them. Thus, the end consumer, year after year after year, benefited from the features and functions that those ROMs surfaced, is the way I'll put it. Now it seems like every single feature that I can think of is somehow enableable on my Honor 8, which is over a year old. I mean, I can quickly switch to one-handed typing. I have the pie menu. I have the built-in color temperature. I have color inversion. I have a whole bunch of gestures. I have the ability to quickly hotspot or not hotspot. I have the power to kill apps every time I turn my phone screen off, and I don't need any extra wear to do this. And it's all, I firmly believe, because of what the ROMs showed people what was possible.
I remember one of the things on my Samsung that I couldn't easily do was turn on the flashlight. It was something they didn't have baked into their TouchWiz UI. You had to download an external app, which a lot of people ended up getting like janky flashlight apps that were questionable, throwing lots of ads up, and there was no reason for that they couldn't have done that, but that was a big reason. And it's simple enough, but one of the reasons I did it, I remember.
Do you remember roughly, Dora, you may know exactly what the date of Android App Addicts episode 1 was?
Well, I'm going to say roughly 2010, 2011. I know if I do a simple search and say Droid X release date, you're right around there. July 15th, 2010. So it was around there, is what I'll say. Because I didn't have that phone too long after the very first episode.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So it's been 8 years. You know, you guys played the numbers game there for a while, and we're doing multiple shows a week. So that sort of blew the thing. You can't just divide by 50 and get the number of years, but let's call it 8 years. Probably 7.5 is probably closer. And you know, we've already talked about it a little bit, the change in the platform in the last 7 years, but let's just take a minute to talk about not only how Android has changed, but how apps have changed in the last 7 years. I mean, like Eric, like you were talking about, the during that phase of life, flashlights and fart apps were the order of the day.
That's when I feel I excelled at this podcast too, but I used to bring those. There's an app now. There's an app for everything. I mean, if you have if you got an insurance card through your employer, you've got an app now. You submit receipts for reimbursements on an app. You check your balances. You pay all your bills on your phone. Yeah, that's within the last couple of years has really exploded. The banking and financial and convenience of otherwise, you know, monetary transactions have really increased on my phone compared to it was even 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. All About Android, March 29th, 2011. We were, I believe, a week or two before that. It was literally right before it. We came out after they did their, I'm trying to remember what they called it. They did like a demo test show. Didn't have a name for it, with 3, of course, completely different hosts. None of their hosts have been there since the beginning. And then 2-week pause, and then they came out with All About Android episode 1, which was then Eileen Riviera, Jason Howe was there, and Ron Richards. I didn't think Jason Howe was there, but and we were like right before then. So I'm gonna say early 2011 was when we first did the very first one, and most of the beginning apps were very, I don't want to say immature because I already used that word. They were very basic. A lot of like map apps, a lot of simple weather apps, calendaring apps, note-taking apps. And that seemed like a huge amount of the apps for the first at least 10 months.
Yeah, we should go back and do a show of just the apps that Steve D brought to the show. And maybe somehow that'll bring him back to the show for a one night only, you know, one weekend only.
Don't hold your breath there, Eric.
I know.
You know, back in that time, you'd hear about a great app, you know, Angry Birds, just to pick something out of the air, that was sweeping the world. And they'd say, available on iPhone, Android coming soon. Or, you know, it just wouldn't be Android. And they'd say, you know, things like, you can't make money on Android because nobody there buys anything. And today, Android is the first platform for most apps. You know, a percentage of them are released on both platforms right away, but most things start with Android because you have a wider distribution base globally, and then they move to iPhone because, you know, it's a harder environment to get into and more expensive. And that's just been, I mean, is that the shepherding of Google that does that? I mean, I know I developed my own app using a drag and drop developer. It was terrible, but it was like $50 to become an Android developer and like $300 to become an iPhone developer. Do you think that was savvy work on the part of Google to just make it the inexpensive entry point for app developers as well as phone owners?
Well, and they had free training if you wanted to learn. And you know, I remember making an app that you pressed a button and made a cat meow. You know, there's a picture of a cat. That was totally free. And if I would have really enjoyed making that, I could have, you know, parlayed that into actual, you know, a business or
dozens of dollars.
Yeah. I always had these thoughts and dreams of maybe, you know, going to the restaurants and getting their menus up on an app, you know, for them. You know, if I had time or ambition, you know, things like that I could have done. I'd rather just podcast and read and play with their apps and you know, tell people about it instead.
Well, yeah. I do think the lower barrier of entry I'll just say the snobbish crowd looked down upon, and they for years leveraged the idea of fragmentation, and because there's nobody hand curating small batched, locally sourced, organically grown applications curated, that there's going to be all kinds of, malware and viruses on Android. And I think it's honestly Google's back-end checker that's basically stopped a huge percentage of it. So we haven't seen, I've seen unwanted behavior on on Android devices, not on mine because, but on other ones. And every time I have, it's been like 3 times in like 7 years. Every time I just take their phone, I hit home, I go to their browser, I hold it down, I drag it to the information icon, I go to storage, I hit clear cache, clear data, close it, loads their browser up, and all unwanted behavior is basically gone. The only other time is when somebody loads like a bad lock screen or something,
or a bad system cleaner. I've had that where they'll download a system cleaner, and then all of a sudden their homepage is, it's almost like back in the day with the computers. Now their lock screen and homepage looks totally different because they're being protected.
Yeah, and I'll put this as gently as possible. Almost half of the listeners to this show own iPhones. And some people say, well, that's because they own $30 Android tablets. Well, whatever. All apps now are ubiquitous on everything that matters. AKA, they're not on Windows because it doesn't matter. They're not on Tizen because it doesn't matter. They're not on the Linux Ubuntu phone because it's basically dead. They're on every other platform because they're the ones that matter. And the real kicker is it just works. We kept getting hammered saying that, everything's fractured. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. Well, as it turns out, all of Apple's websites are hand-coded HTML pages because they don't know how to program. They don't even know how to set up their own data centers. They admitted that the entire iCloud infrastructure is actually riding on Google storage.
And Amazon. And
because they don't know how to do it. So the back-end intelligence is what I'll say is what has caused Google to become as successful as Android has. It's not because of personal handcrafted operating systems. It's just because they let everyone do what they wanted to do, and they just supported the back end.
And I think early on for me, it was the choice of Android over iPhone. I loved my BlackBerry. If BlackBerry, I had any thoughts that BlackBerry was going to keep up, I would have kept with them. That was my first browser that was in my hand, though. I had my BlackBerry that could do some things, but I had like my Dell Axum running Windows CE or something, to do. I was actually listening to podcasts back then when they weren't called podcasts yet, but Android, I could change my home screen to make it look a little different. And I knew that I would be so bored with an iPhone, even that early on, if they had that locked down. Plus at that time, I didn't have any Macs in the house. I wasn't into that infrastructure. I think I had an iPod Shuffle maybe when that came out, but I just I liked the customization that Android offered, and even if I had to go and root and ROM to get it even more, that was my thing. Because I'm a tinkerer, I guess maybe nerdy thing, but I just didn't feel I could do that with an iPhone then.
Yeah, this show sort of captured that nascent market there of Android was the tinkerer's phone. It was the maker's phone. It was the Linux guy also had an Android phone. And I wasn't around then, so that's why I say, this show, you guys, I was a listener for that reason. I was, it was sort of a barren wasteland. You got your new Android phone. Okay, what are you going to do with it? Well, you go to the Play Store and look around, and the Play Store has come a long way in the last few years. It was hard to find anything, and the things that were surfaced were, largely garbage apps out there. So it was not. You needed some guidance. You needed some of that curated stuff, some of that handcrafted, artisanally grown stuff there. And this show provided that. And I was a listener for a long time. I was a friend of Steve Cherubino's, and I had gotten to know Door through his Linux podcast and my Linux podcast. And when Steve left the show, Cherubino left the show, I was like, can I please do this show? Because it was like, joining a family that I had been a part of all that time. And now I get to be, I get to talk back and you hear me. That was an impressive thing because you didn't used to be able to hear me. I did a lot of talking. You just couldn't hear me do it. And so, I've been just really, I say this all the time, but, and I really mean it. I have been honored to be a part of this show. I've been honored to, sit alongside you guys digitally on a regular basis. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite times of the week for that. But also, I feel that we still, all these years later, provide a valid service to the community. I have tried to bring more of an entertainment bent to it than was there before. I hope I've been successful in that, but I still think there's a lot of value that we have to offer just by giving real reviews of real apps instead of saying I read this review of this thing and I thought I would talk about it, which is what a lot of the other remaining Android podcasts that I listen to. That's what they do. They're not experience driven. They're review driven.
Yeah. And I'll summarize basically every Android podcast. Because remember, I subscribed to almost 150 podcasts now. I'll tell you every Android podcast in the last week, basically in 15 seconds. The new Samsung phone, nothing special, different, unique, better. The new LG phone is the exact same LG phone with a new name with some mystical, magical AI thing supposedly on it. And then there's the Matrix phone from Nokia. And I just summarized about 13 hours worth of podcasting from other people in about 40 seconds because that's all they do. They spend literally an hour telling you everything about the new Samsung 9, and there's nothing even remotely worth talking about. Except the price. American carriers, surprise, are charging 15% over retail for it now. Why? Because they can. And every time everybody walks into one of those stores and says, oh, give me that new Samsung device, you are contributing to the problem.
Yeah, but this one can fall out of your boat and it won't totally get fried immediately.
Okay. I'll just pull a Steve C and say, don't drop it. Because it was honestly almost exactly what we said about a month ago. This Mobile World Congress would be absolutely not spectacular. What was cool in that event was the Dell Chromebooks. They're basically ruggedized, spill-proof, waterproof, drop-proof, antibacterial, blah, 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 under $300. Really, really nice-looking Chromebooks. Huawei showed off the Mate X laptop. The only word that comes to mind is sexy. Oh my goodness. I don't even know if it can run Linux, but it is unbelievably good looking is what I'll say. Oh, and then Asus is coming out with what looks to be a non-spectacular phone, but lots of RAM, which is good. Battery, which is good. And then unfortunately, I believe it was Asus or Lenovo was coming out with a phone with the notch on top, which was just a joke.
That's neat. That's I don't.
It's
that makes
extra pixels, guys. How could you be mad about 50 extra pixels? Those are pixels you wouldn't have had otherwise.
I guess I'm in the middle of a torrential downpour of pixels. I don't need no more pixels. I don't know.
We don't need those stinking pixels.
How much more does it cost to get rid of those pixels on a flat screen? It's got to cost more than to have them there.
I don't know. It was a marketing gimmick as far as I can tell. And in the world of apps, I'll just say really quick, I remember when it was big news, Dropbox launched their app on Android. That literally changed the ecosystem. And like today, I don't know what could possibly happen in an independent third-party application coming out on this platform that could cause even close to the amount of ripples, if you will, that app caused. But we're trying to find them.
Trivia HQ.
Mm,
From the time I brought it a month ago or 2 months ago, whenever it was, to now, that's consuming many people's time cycles at 2 and 8 Central every day.
well, so did Jersey Shore, but that doesn't mean it's good.
No, I didn't say it's good. It's probably bad. I haven't got 12 answers right yet.
Yeah, I just think it's unbelievably cheeky and just hyper focused towards the masses and beyond politically correctness from what I saw.
What do you think of the idea of Dropbox combining with Google Drive?
Excuse me?
Yeah, that they just announced that today, that Google Drive and Dropbox are combining.
I didn't hear such a thing.
I did. I'll find a link.
I don't understand why.
So they don't have to compete with each other anymore?
So I'm assuming Google bought Dropbox. That's the only way I can think of that would happen.
Well, I know last week something happened in Dropbox where I want to say somebody big up, high up left, and they were going public, I believe. They were doing something.
Dropbox is going to go public very soon. But I just read that Dropbox is going to be integrated right into Google Drive and Google what do they call their Office suite? Google Docs.
G apps. G Suite. G Suite.
Yeah.
Well, here's the whole thing: is as long as I get a native Linux client, I'm okay with it.
I probably still have a Dropbox account if Google Drive wasn't so good. Yeah, Dropbox to add native G Suite integration and new partnership with Google.
Mark, is there anything you would like to say about G Suite?
Well, yeah, there you go. Well, now you can use your Dropbox in there, Mark.
Yeah, except that probably not.
Exactly.
Yeah. They find ways to make sure that those of us who paid for the service don't actually get to use it.
Oh, you pay in multiple ways. And I will say the only other G Suite thing I heard, I was almost getting excited because supposedly Google is looking to take on Slack. Slack, I will say, I was the very first podcast I ever heard talk about it easily 8 months before anybody else talked about it. I brought it to the show and I'm pretty sure I said something like, what in the hell is this supposed to be? It looks like IRC for hippies or something like that. And then in the middle of the article, it stated they're going to do a web-based desktop centric Hangouts that is only available for people in G Suites. So I thought, oh, well, that's a complete waste of code.
So it looks like Dropbox you'll be able to store, open, and start G Suite. Put your documents right into Dropbox instead of G Suite. So I guess you don't have to have Google installed to get to them. I don't know. I don't I don't understand what that even means, because they're already in Google if you're using G Suite.
Yeah. The only other news I heard that was even mildly interesting was Ring Video Doorbell being bought by Amazon.
Oh, that kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah,
they probably sell more than anybody else.
Well, it's to help, I think, with their Amazon Key door locking video camera service,
which already comes. So they're gonna probably helps make the Key thing work better. Maybe using their intellectual property to bump that product up. That was not received really well, if I remember correctly.
I'm sure in certain environments it was welcomed with open arms, but I'm sure in 80% of the United States, people said, excuse me? No.
Yeah.
Well, that sort of, we were talking about we're struggling to find news, right? Things that are exciting. And that's sort of the thing that we've been talking about for a while on this show is the maturation of the Android OS. It's not exciting anymore. Mobile World Congress is not exciting because we have reached the adulthood of the product. And there, you know, adult life is not all that exciting. And so there's not going to be great news until some new thing comes along. You know, and Google's throwing their support behind things like Fuchsia, and, you know, Android may not even be a thing in another 7 years. And so, you know, that as we look forward to the future of the technology, what's the future of this show? If we can't talk about Android apps, if Android falls by the wayside, what do we do then? It has the maturation of the Android platform as it coincided with the maturation of this podcast. Has that made us, you know, not long for this world? What do you think, Dor? I mean, this is your baby. What do you think?
I think there's definite possibility of us hitting a roadblock forcibly because of the ecosystem. But I believe, like, while the A and B drive on computers, the floppy diskettes went away, we still have storage media connected to it. I think we are going to have at least the name Android. I believe if Fuchsia becomes a reality, it really could be in 3 years. 3 or less, I believe it could, in some token, become real. And I honestly expect they'll just call it Android. They'll keep that name brand. They'll keep that brand moving forward. So the show could still have a possibility of morphing into something a little bit different. And to be honest, this Google I/O, if the Yeti device becomes real, that's going to be another avenue of progression for this show to be able to get those devices and experience streaming home gaming as being part of the show. So instead of the games just being touch based, you know, on your screen while you're on the bus, you could have genuine family entertainment multiplayer games on your home television set. So I think we have equal opportunities of being, you know, dead-ended because stuff's going to change underneath our feet. But I also think we have equal opportunity to expand and stay current.
I learned something from that Silicon Valley show, and I think we could pivot. I learned that word, and we could end up just being the Play Store Playboys or something like Play Store Playboys. Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Like
we'll be that. It'll be PPP instead of AAA. It'll fit perfectly. If they
on the bright side, then we can also review movies. Mark, you could bring your Marvel goodness and stuff to the show, and then
I'm reading audiobooks on the Play Store now.
Okay, then I guess I'm just the game nerd, I guess.
Well, I'm not going to exclusively do audiobooks and books.
I think what this show is for most of the people who listen, and we've got some people in the chat room who can tell me if I'm wrong about this or right. This show is not about Android app. It's about a community. Over the last nearly 8 years, we've built a community here of like-minded individuals. It's as I was saying earlier, when I came on to do the show, it was like joining the family. Like I knew all you guys, and it was odd because I expected Eric to know me. You know, because I knew him. I listened to him every week. It's like, why don't you know me, Eric? I mean, we should know each other very well. And I kind of think that, you know, if we were to bump into some of these people or you know, meet them up at a podcast a convention or whatever, they would feel the same way. It's like, this is just my old friend. I'm going to hang out with my old friend that I've never actually met, now that I think about it. And so this show has plenty of future, regardless of whether it's about Android.
Mark, just imagine if you listen to us, but you were also in the tub, just how intimate of a relationship you would feel you have.
And don't feel bad, Mark. I had heard you. You know, I didn't know you, but I had listened to Mark Cockrell before I met you on my show.
So Steve C and I worked out this bit we were going to do, and scheduling never worked out. The show had been going on for a couple of years. And I was going to come on and be like a guest host, because you guys did that sometimes back then. You bring on people. And I was going to be talking about like apps that were a year old as if they were the greatest thing ever. It's like, have you guys heard about this Angry Birds app? It's really cool. I really think this is going to catch on, people. And I was just going to go the whole show like that. I was going to play it straight as if I was really that clueless and just see how the audience responded, but it never worked out. But I really think that would have been fun.
Yeah, that would have been good. And by the way, Steve D brought Angry Birds to the show.
That's how old that game is?
Yeah.
Wow. I hated that game.
You know, they just came out with an Angry Birds 2. I don't know. It must be a new version of Angry Birds 2. So I installed it just to say, well, you know, it's been a long time. Let's check this out. I don't even think I got to where I could play myself, where I could, you know, let go of the training it put me through just to play Angry Birds. And I was like, no, I'm done. I couldn't get that far. Too many animations, too much teaching me how to do things with birds.
Well, let's listen to what some of our listeners have to say in some of our listener feedback. This first one is from Adam, who sent this a couple of weeks ago in preparation. It says, please read on episode 500 of Android App Addicts. He says, congratulations to Eric, the manager Ardini, Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockrell, Steve C., Sean Dirty Thumbs Johnson, Steve D., Timster, the occasional Cody Cooper, and all the above, and the one and only DoorToDoorGeek on reaching 500 episodes of the Android App Addicts podcast. I've been listening since 2013, and after discovering you, went back and started listening from episode 1. Thus, I remember when Door brought about 100 loaders to one episode. All Timster's ghost hunting apps. The time Door was rear-ended by a Czechoslovakian. When the original host, Steve C., switched to using an iPhone. Eric's addictions to Ingress and BB Tan, but he's not a gamer. Sean's fixation with Burt Reynolds on Voxer, and so many great apps and games. It is thanks to you that I discovered the pleasures of Gurk. And as a parent who likes to listen to you around his child, many thanks for keeping the show family-friendly each and every episode. Best wishes, Adam, the over-the-pond geek.
Thank you, Adam. That was, yeah. I can tell you listened that long. I remember not being on the show and listening, and this was before I was ever on the show. I don't even know if I had been on Podnutz yet, and I don't know if I was collecting. I was driving in a car, and I know exactly where I was. I was on this bridge. And I was crossing this bridge, and the guys were talking about how they'd given up on Android. It wasn't going to work out, and that they were switching to iPhones. And I think I was so angry with them, and I was so mad. And it was an April Fool's joke, and they totally got me. And they played it off so well. I was just so angry when I heard that. I had probably, I don't remember for sure, but I probably just invested in my first Android or something like the week before, maybe. But I just remember, I can remember it to this day where I was at when they did that to me. And
I remember
how
that.
I got taken.
That was Steve C. He came on the show and said, guys, I'm canceling the show. I'm all in on iPhone now. I remember that very clearly.
Oh yeah, because Salsa was on that episode too, and he was like, "Well, I'd love to go back and listen to it." He's like, "Well, there's Angry Birds on Android too, or something like that."
Yeah, and I'll say, the number of people to thank is too many. Jose Cuervo, as
oh, you know, it might have been
Jose
who said that. Yeah, it might have been Jose, not
Salsa. Yeah. Guys like Ellis Owens, Jeff Owens, Jose, everybody who's ever been on the show, we owe you a great deal. And I will say this, in my heart of hearts, I completely am still heartbroken and missing Timster.
Agreed.
That's all I'm going to say. No matter how many times I try to contact him, he never replies. And I really do miss the guy. Period. I just do.
At some point you start being a stalker. Just, you may have crossed that line.
And that's okay. Knowing is half the battle. Dirty Thumbs every couple weeks. I ping him on Voxer. He pings me back. He still does the Horrified Chicken podcast with him and his wife going over horror movies. Not family friendly. They literally spend 2/3 of the episode digging on each other and complaining about their kids, which just means I can completely relate. So it's a really fun thing to listen to. And I gotta say, hanging out with Steve C down in Orlando ranks among the best weekends of my life. Kind of thing. Just seeing
absolutely
him again.
That was a Dora, and I owe it to you. Thank you for making that an opportunity for me to go, for not only just to get away from this cold and snow, but to hang out with you and Steve, and even seeing Johnny and Brantley. And, Johnny and Brantley, they show up in our chat room every now and again too. It's just really good.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm not above anything. I paid Eric money. I paid his ticket to the conference, basically forcing him to come down to there. You got to do what you got to do.
I appreciate it.
And what still sticks in my head as one of the best memories of the show was Steve C playing the song from Karate Kid, "You're the Best," when we were having benchmark wars. Oh, how the times have changed. Is what I'm gonna say.
Hardware benchmarking. That's still a thing in some circles, but most of the world just doesn't care. We care about how long does the battery last?
How does it feel in your hand?
But we were computer people. We wanted to know, we wanted to have our computers running good, so our phones to run good was just natural.
Oh, yeah. And home screen launchers was something I remember Steve C didn't completely grasp. He was like, why would you do that? So then on one episode, I literally pulled like 20 of them out. And brought 20 of them to the one show, describing how they were each different. They each offered different things. And by the end, Steve was like, shut up. I give up. I'm done. Never talk about home launchers again.
Let me read another email from Aaron. He says, happy 500th, guys. Time to realize that if you haven't figured it out after 500 tries, it's time to pack it in and go home. Just kidding. You guys are great. I look forward to AAA every week, even if the apps aren't for me. The banter is. So thank you, Steve, Eric, and Mark, from the bottom of my eardrums. No apps for me today. However, I would like to mention a podcast. Vox has a new show called Today Explained. They're short episodes, around 20 minutes each, released every Monday through Friday. They promote themselves as being for your afternoon commute. They've been at it a few weeks, and have covered interesting topics about how the president's football actually works, to the Black Panther, to Cape Town, South Africa's impending 0 day when the city will be forced to turn off the public water system and ration water. 0 day is in July 2018, by the way. I always appreciate the good podcast recommendation, and I thought I'd pass one on myself. Not enough AAA or Geek Ramp to keep my podcast player full. Tears from Canada. Here's to the next 500. Aaron from Ontario, Canada. So I think that's cool that as we hit a pretty large milestone of 500 shows, we're also plugging a show that's been going on a couple of weeks. You don't get that in a lot of other podcasts. And I've always appreciated Door for being willing and excited about sharing the love around the rest of the community.
Yeah. And I'll say, the one thing that Podnutz has always tried to be is normal people, podcasting to normal people. I love the fact that the first two emails aren't from the United States, because let's be for real, the internet is everywhere. As soon as we have people on Mars, guess what? They're going to be downloading podcasts as well. I know I've heard of Vox. I know I've seen Vox websites before, but I had no idea they had a podcast. So curse you, Aaron. I think I'm now up to 150 podcasts because I'm going to subscribe to this. I love the idea of 20-minute micro informal formal information podcast where they don't try to be too serious, but they try to take their subject serious and describe it in such a way and then end the episode on to the next.
I've never gotten into a podcast that wasn't an hour long. I've tried a couple shorter ones. I just didn't. They left me wanting too much more, I think.
I tell you, Eric, there's a couple that are really good shorter ones. I know one you will not listen to at all is Switchcraft by a guy named Bill. He's a teacher, and it's about the Nintendo Switch three times a week, like 20-minute episodes.
Well, I might have some need for that soon. Well, I can say it out loud, unless I can't say it too loud because his the bedroom's right above mine, but there's birthdays this month, and I might have more use for that podcast soon, and I might have to turn a certain somebody onto that one very soon. Yeah, I can't remember the ones I've listened to that were short, but you know what? I did just install one I haven't listened to. I'll give it another try.
There's an oldie but a goodie. The computer tutor in Florida. We hung with him.
Very nice guy. Very, very cool hanging out with him.
Yeah. Each of his episodes are like 15 minutes. And to me, they're the perfect size episode to share with your non-techie friends, to explain to them, stop asking me about this. Just listen to this guy. You know.
Right. I honestly, I use computers at work, but I could probably use some of that myself because I'm not in it every day. And I know I'm like on the Steve D kick today, but sorry. But if somebody wants to listen to a podcast, I'm just putting this out there. If you want to hear a podcast where the host sounds exactly like Steve D'Amico, listen to Modern History X. It's a fairly humorous show.
Not family friendly.
Where they take one subject of history and talk about it for about an hour or so, him and another guy. And if you miss the listening to Steve D, this guy, if he didn't say that his name was Tom, I would have swore it was Steve D. He could pass for him. Same everything. I don't know. Must be the region. Must not only brew
it's
that
the water.
It's not only that kind of accent, but also that kind of attitude and comedic timing. It's a Modern History X.
All right, let me move on to the next email. We have a bevy of them. This is from Chuck, who says, congratulations on the 500th episode. Well, that says it, huh? The rest is optional for Mark's dramatic reading if time and interest allows. Oh, I'm interested.
It does.
He says, this is a significant achievement. You did it. You found a passion and you went all in. We followed you, and now you celebrate the 500th episode. It's been how many years? Through this show, I've expanded my interest and met a lot of people with similar nerdiness and made good friends with some too. Back when I got my first Android phone, I discovered a whole new world. There was no place talking about Android apps and the wonderfully technical marvels they called smartphones. The conventional news was not going to mention it. I dug in and I looked for news, and they talked about apps. What are these apps that they speak of? Where can I find these apps? I must find them. They sound amazing. And they're all free? So I found the Android market, and it's full of apps. Yes, they are free. Okay, some are paid ones, but they're 99 cents. Nope, I'm cheap. By nature, I'll get the free ones. I began my collection. Soon after, I discovered I have filled my storage on my phone. How is this possible? I guess I have a fair amount. Then I started counting them. I got lost after 80. The total was over 100. This is outrageous, but I can get an SD card. Those aren't too expensive, and I get more apps. Then I discovered podcast. I found this show about app addicts. With the plethora of my apps, I figured I was one and I needed to address it. So the help I got wasn't any kind of therapy. I was thinking it would be. I certainly have been hooked since. So many episodes and so many apps. I've changed my cheapskate ways, and I pay for apps that I find a value or potential in. We won't have apps if we don't have developers making them. Support the developers. I have been fortunate to travel up my local interstate in a van loaded with guys that I'd hear on my own podcast. It was surreal and very cool to hang out with these guys. The show has evolved over time and found its groove, not to mention the audience to keep it going. I was listening to the very prolific content creator Kevin Smith recently when someone mentioned they have a podcast. He asked, how many episodes? You have 500. This is a significant achievement. Thank you. I am grateful for that there's a method I can contribute to the content creator of my choice. For the record, I do know how to find the number of apps installed. I have 141 installed on my main carry and I have 3 operational phones and a tablet. It sounds worse when I see it written. How many do you guys have? I don't remember how much SD cards were in 2011, but just yesterday I picked up a 32 gig SD card for $11. My tablet has been in a drawer for over a month now, never getting any attention. It now serves as my screen when I fly my little DJI Spark, which I will gladly demonstrate how I use when you return to the Pacific Northwest in April for Linux Fest Northwest 2018. Keep doing it, and thank you. And special thanks for Mark for indulging us with his wonderful dramatic reading. Your reading of the app's reviews gives the show that extra flavor. Maybe this could be a new Patreon level.
Ooh. I like that idea.
Just last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I got the notice from GoDaddy that I needed to renew my dramaticreviews.com website that I did right here live on this show a year ago. And I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, so he asked, how many devices do we have? And I will admit, I got my main Honor 8 phone. I have two other phones that I use periodically. I have my Moto X original, and I have my Asus Zenfone 2. Right now I use one of them in kids' cardboard, so they can use cardboard and have fun with that. The other one I primarily use as like a standalone GPS device and as a backup when I go on the road. I then have my GPD handheld gaming console, very easily the second best handheld console I've ever owned, played, or used. I've owned at least 6 handheld Android gaming rigs, not phones, not tablets, but dedicated for gaming. The GPD XD is by far the best. I then have my Cube i6 Air, I believe it's called, dual booting tablet, which is a pile of junk, and I only use in extreme circumstances because it has Windows 7 on it. That is the only instance of Windows in this house.
I have the Pixel 2 is my daily driver. I have a Note 4 that I use a lot. That was my former daily driver before I got into the Pixels, and before I came to Project Fi. I have a broken Dell 10-inch tablet, convertible laptop tablet, Android, and I use the Amazon Fire HD 8 quite a bit. And I think that's the only 3 devices. And I got an S3. The S3, the USB port doesn't work anymore, so I have to charge the battery outside of the phone on a wall wall plug charger thing for the extended battery. And I mostly use that for setting up temporary security video recordings and video stuff. Don't do a whole lot with that one. It's kind of long in the tooth, though. The S3 is a little old. That was the Galaxy S3, if you remember that episode. How about you, Mark?
I'm so boring. I have one phone, my OnePlus 5, and I have one tablet, my Kindle Fire HD 10. That's it. And I have about 160 apps. I was just thinking that I probably had the fewest of anybody on this panel, and then I started looking, and it's like, well, actually, that's pretty respectable.
You got 160 on your phone right now?
Right now, yeah.
That's good. I've only got 127 on my phone right now. And I take that back. I also do have a couple Android TV boxes too. I forgot to mention those.
Yeah, and technically I have my Odroid C1 upstairs. No, my Odroid C2 is my main streaming rig upstairs, and that's running Android just because easily launches Hulu, Netflix, YouTube, Kodi. Very family-friendly interface compared to like a Linux desktop running on it.
Just a quick aside, having a conversation here in the chat room about listening speed. Lakata says he listens at 2x, and I called him a rookie because I listen at 3x. Door, you're probably up to what, 19x by now. It just occurred to me just recently. I was listening to a show that for whatever reason, the download didn't happen. So I was streaming it and I couldn't speed it up.
Oh,
I realized that these, not only was it painful, but these people that I thought were really quick-witted weren't. I sound a lot smarter at 3x because you don't hear the pauses in between the times that I come up with my quips. And so please listen really fast because it makes me sound smarter.
Well, well, and they sound like they're on drugs.
Yeah. My best, one of my best friends in the world, Seth, the co-host of my podcast, cannot listen to him at 1x speed because he sounds like he's brain dead. He really does.
We used to, back when DVRs first came out, we had the first DVR, I think, in Illinois. It was sent to me by a guy in California, and we hooked it up to our DirecTV dish. And one of the funnest things we used to do, well, we were young, this is before kids probably. So it's like 18 years ago. We would record the Weather Channel and weathermen specifically and just slow them down just a tad. And they were so drunk sounding. It was hilarious. Now I don't listen at 3-speed. How long have you been at 3x, Mark?
I don't know, 6 months probably.
Oh, that's good. Now I do listen. I suppose there's probably genres of podcasts that need sped up more than others. One I found that really cannot be listened to at regular speed is metal detecting podcasts, where they talk about metal detecting. They really need to be sped up to even listen. But they have cute songs that sound really neat when you're at the beginning too, and in the end.
I'll put it like this. I'm sure you guys have known of a town, a city, or a part of a neighborhood that just smells funny. It stinks.
Oh yeah.
But then I'm sure you also have to know the people that live there don't recognize the smell. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Because like when they wake up in the morning, they don't think this place smells. To them, it just doesn't smell because it's so baked into their psyche. Now, when they leave and come home from work, I'm sure they notice the smell, but also sure it dissipates.
Smells like home.
Yeah. Part of me believes I'm literally almost getting like a mental disorder from listening to stuff so fast. I can't communicate. I can't listen to any TV or movies or anything anymore.
Just a quick aside. I was a physics major for a time in college. Science is something that I'm passionate about. But one of the biggest fundamental problems I had with the entire concept of science that we know today is it's entirely built on empiricism, observations and viewing. And one of the craziest things, for example, that we all take for granted is we talk about oxygen as being an odorless, colorless, tasteless gas. We have no idea. No human has ever experienced the world without oxygen. We've never seen anything not through oxygen or an oxygen nitrogen atmosphere. So even in like the underwater, right? We've got goggles, and the goggles have air in them. I'm convinced that the reason aliens have never visited our Earth is that we're swimming around in sewage and we just don't know it.
Yeah, the only time we would notice it is literally our very first breath, and then we can't remember nor communicate what it's like.
Wow. Yeah. That's deep, man. Is a fart really just tiny atoms of poop in the air?
Let's
generally
there. And see, Mark, that harkens back to one of the things I've been talking about on DDG, which is perception is reality. Just because it's there every day and it's part of our life and it's invisible to us, it is a non-factor. When to someone on the outside, it could be a disgusting, putrid, rancid thing to be around.
Yeah. Empiricism is not the magic thing that the world seems to think it is. Scientific world, anyway.
Yeah. And I'll say, for certain things, I cannot mentally slow down enough to do. So I'm seriously considering slowing down my speed for a week or two and just see how I react. But
it's a good experiment.
I can be listening with an earbud in my ear at 3x and understanding it, and it sounds native to me. I don't even notice that it's sped up. Like maybe a laugh sounds kind of mechanical, or if there's interstitial music, obviously that doesn't work. But the conversation, if it's a good podcaster with a good presentation and a good non-dialectic delivery, I don't even notice. And yet at the same time, somebody can walk up behind me at my cube and start talking to me, and I hear them at 1x, and that sounds perfectly normal too. It's a mental shift that my brain is able to make, that in the earbud 3x is normal, and in real life 1x is normal. What happens is when I listen to one of these people in my real life recorded through an earbud at 1x, and it's like, whoa, that's just not right. Something is wrong here. This is not how the world is supposed to be.
Yeah, to me, if I'm communicating with somebody, the brain has that knob turned right. But if I was to watch a podcast live, if I was to skip a week and watch this show live, I couldn't, because you guys would sound like you're on drugs.
Yeah, do you listen to Geek Rant at 3x?
I do.
Okay.
I can listen to you now and you sound perfectly normal. But if I listen to Android App Addicts at 1x, it's a mind bender.
Yeah.
It's the earphone. It's the earphones then.
It must be.
No.
It's a mental trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. It is just like when you're driving fast and the things are whizzing by you, you don't even notice the things whizzing by you because you're looking straight ahead. But then if you look to the side, you realize if I stare at that, I'm going to get physically ill. It's just because you don't notice. Also,
when you're driving really, really fast, there comes a point, for me, it's around 110, 115 or so, that suddenly everything slows down. My perception, that switch flips in my brain and nothing seems fast anymore.
The only thing things start wiggling and shaking. I'm like, oh shit, this tire's gonna fall off. When you get that fast, things just at least maybe I've not been in the right car at that speed.
Well, the fastest I've ever been in my life, I was on a motorcycle. I was 21 years old, 22, somewhere around there. I hit 180 miles an hour in 4th gear. I had another gear to go.
Oh,
and I was like, I don't have the testicular fortitude to use 5th gear. I'm slowing down now.
What kind of bike was this?
It was a Kawasaki Ninja. Just
that's a big Ninja.
That's what everybody rode when we were that young.
Yeah, back in that age. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a big, huge engine in my car. I could probably go really fast. I don't like going over 80. I would rather just use that engine to just burn tires off in the smoke and just leave big piles of black rubber everywhere. I'm more of a takeoff kind of guy. I like to put you back in the seat at the beginning, and then that's good. Like an 8th mile. That's all I need.
Well, I understand you. But see, my dream car, I told the wife this last week, I reiterate it every couple years just to make sure she remembers that if we ever hit the lotto, the only thing that I really want to buy is a Mach 5, a speed racer car. And it isn't because I expect it to go 180 or whatever. It's because I want it to look like it. And I want that steering wheel, and I want the buttons on the steering wheel. So when I hit the buttons, it makes the right sound. And then I'm in heaven. I don't need anything else.
And you need an ejector seat, clearly.
And I'm going to need a child and a monkey in my trunk.
Right.
Or chimpanzee in my trunk.
And it goes, a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let me read another email. This is from Dwayne and Karen, and they say, long note, and I apologize. If you don't have time to read it, I understand. No, this is not a long note. Dwayne and Karen. First, congratulations on reaching 500 episodes. I believe I've been listening since the double digits, and this show is my first Podnutz podcast. I've been running Linux for well over a decade now because of you, Door. I'm running a Pi at home, and I'm just setting up a Rock 64 in the truck. Next, I'll provide an app that I use all the time that's useful for anyone traveling interstate highways. It's called iExit. When it started, it will read your GPS and determine the location and direction of travel to show you the gas stations, hotels, RV parks, and many other things ahead of you on the road. I highly recommend it for anyone with a road trip ahead of them. Finally, I have a request to any app developers. I travel all 48 states, and road conditions, along with inclement weather, are huge and ever-changing factors. It would be great to have an app notify me if the road is closed or if a chain law is in effect. Waze is okay, but it has a bunch of bells and whistles and doesn't support accounts for trucks at all. Plus, I don't even have the screen to devote to it. If I was a developer in a previous life, DBase, FoxPro, Cold Fusion, SQL Server, and the like, to date myself, I tried a couple of different things, including a fancy Tasker task that got me part of the way, but it's unreliable. The information is available on Twitter and websites, but I'm an antisocial in nearly every way possible. No facey space for years now, and happier for it. And parsing HTML is not what I want to do in my spare time. Any help is appreciated, and keep up the great work. Dwayne.
Cold Fusion, FoxPro, and DBase. Oh.
95, 94. That's what we're talking about.
Dwayne, I understand. I understand all too well, and I understand why you don't do any of that now, because it takes away your life.
And Dwayne, kudos for not being a social media person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw this out there. I can tell Dwayne's been listening since the dual digits because I brought this app in episode 80.
Nice.
So thank you, Dwayne. You're still using it, and I forgot about it. And I do travel with an RV, and this is well, now I don't have an RV anymore. I got a trailer and a truck, but I just installed it, and I will start using it again. And I'm glad to know that it's still working.
Well, I'm going to use it here in a couple weeks because the family and I are going back to Orlando.
Oh, you're going to get that stuff we left in the room? Oh,
yeah, that's the ticket. And I'll say this. What Dwayne, it sounds like what he really needed is now dead. Yahoo Pipes. Yahoo Pipes was a very good interface into live parsing, filtering, manipulating strings of web text or URLs or HTML, where you didn't have, it wasn't work. It really wasn't work. It was the simplest interface I've ever used to do really advanced flows, is the way I put it. But it's dead. So that sucks.
Doesn't Waze have anything like that integrated in it?
Waze tries to be everything to everybody, which seems to upset a lot of people, especially truckers. There's not a single trucker I know who likes the way. They all hate the Waze app.
Okay, I've never used it, so I was just guessing.
That was my experience with Waze. It was just too noisy. I use Google Maps exclusively, but this iExit app is awesome. I will be using that the next time I'm traveling in an unfamiliar area.
Yeah, and I will make sure that app is in the notes.
Lakata in the chat room says, we need an app that stores a set of apps for one category, like travel apps. I don't travel all the time, but I can't remember the apps when I want to and need them. That's a good idea. You know, I will do to you what my high school science teacher used to say to me. That's a great idea, Lakata. Go do that and let us know how it turns out.
And I'll say, Lakata, I don't travel all the time, but when I do, I travel with Dos Equis. Or Foster's, I guess.
It's Australian for beer.
Yeah. We used to have home screens that would try to do auto organization, and that kind of would get them part of the way there, but you would always have to have it installed. And which then if it's installed, you could just create folders and manually drag and drop them there. But I don't think that's what he intends on the end result. So that's a bit of a painful answer to swallow.
Well, all we need to do is take the Android App Addict spreadsheet and just do a pivot table or two on that, and problem solved.
Well, take all the URLs, pipe them through Yahoo Pipes, and then pull back the categories, the reviews, the number of reviews, and the average reviews, and then voila.
And you're going to you can't just go by the name of the app on a lot of them too, because sometimes the names have nothing to do with what the app does. You'll have to actually get in and install and, see what that one actually did again. I'm just looking at one called Cron for Phone. No idea what Cron for Phone would do.
It's
cron
cron.
is cron is a scheduling agent. Think of it as the Windows task scheduler, where you could set things to automatically happen on a reoccurring time basis of almost any magnitude, whether it be boot up, shutdown every second, every third Tuesday, or anything in between.
Well, that would work, but actually that app doesn't exist anymore, it looks like. So. But that was from episode 79, so I was just going back in the old days, man. Back when it was a lot of our apps back then, I realized didn't even come from a Play Store. Sometimes they didn't even come from the Android marketplace. You know, we used to use AppBrain and other things like that back then.
I'd forgotten all about AppBrain. Yeah, that was the alternative market.
Yeah. Are you going to go there now and start installing some stuff?
Probably.
See how it goes?
These days, AppBrain is just a categorized facade on the Google Play Store. Every link goes back to Google Play.
All right, I have one more 500 email to read. So I think actually this may not be. It may just be a regular email, but I'll read it and see. It's from Randy. He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Podnutz is the best sounding Podnutz network. Unfortunately, I'm a long haul truck driver, so I can't listen live. I even buy the apps y'all recommended, like Podcast Addict and Castback, but Podkicker Pro is my favorite. When Mark was talking about patrons a couple months ago, it got me thinking. I listen to music services and other podcasts that I pay monthly fees for, and I'm always looking in my feed for the new Android app Addicts show and always listen to it first. So reminding people, and one day keep reminding people one day they will wake up also. Like for y'all to bring a do not install app every once in a while and tell why you shouldn't install it. Thanks for what you do. Battery 56%, proud supporter of Podnutz."
Who was that?
Randy.
I
didn't want to say
I read this one earlier, Randy, and I brought if we ever get to apps tonight, I don't know if we're gonna, but if we do, I did bring one for you, not to install. Yeah, we used to have crap apps. We used to,
yeah.
You know, I still bring crap apps, but we don't tell everybody not to install them. I kind of pass them off as decent apps sometimes.
Because crap apps used to almost be fun because look at what they're trying to do. I can't believe somebody would put this out.
I mean, there's a lot of that in the Play Store. The crap app that I was going to bring this week, though, actually has millions of installs.
So it's Angry Birds? High IQ?
No, well, similar. It's the crappy version of HQ. Yes.
Well, we might as well just do it instead of.
Okay. This is called BuzzVideo. Win big prizes. Beat the queue. And I will paste it there. So this tries to be another version doing the exact same thing as Trivia HQ. The only other part of it, though, is it has a really horrible library of videos and GIFs that if you don't immediately turn off notifications, it'll be telling you about all these GIFs and videos, but it's nonstop. It's nonstop videos that aren't that funny. I mean, Door is the ultimate GIF finder, and he keeps me entertained with all these little videos and stuff he finds. These guys, you think, would at least be able to keep up with Door, because Door's got like another full-time job. This is theirs, and it's not happening. So they do a trivia quiz thing. It's not as funny, not as well put together. It's much easier. I think I answered the first 6 questions without even breaking a sweat. And but just the whole interface and the videos tells you don't install this, and it's by Top Buzz Entertainment. Do the if you're into trivia, do the HQ. Stay away from this one.
Okay.
It's like it's trying to
5 million to 10 million installs.
Yeah. It's like it's trying to leverage almost BuzzFeed with BuzzVideo.
I think I might have brought a Top Buzz app before or something. It seemed very familiar, but this seems like the worst part.
It was awarded as Google Play's most popular new app of 2017 by the developers, I'm sure.
maybe.
Yeah, or by the developers' moms.
But I mean, the videos they give you aren't even. I mean, even when I did have notifications on, they're like, "Hey, check this out," and they were all the clickbaity titled ones. You know, it's like this person's pushing a shopping cart. You'll never know what happens next, or whatever. You know, that kind of thing. All of them. Horrible.
So Erica Long commented, spams your phone with 1 million notifications. Also, the trivia part is hidden. You have to look for it. The little videos are displayed more up front. And the developer replied, hi, dear user. Sorry to involve you in the trouble. Did you mean the notifications are annoying? If so, you could turn it off by 1, click bottom right icon, me. 2, click settings. 3, push notification on and off. Hope this helps. You have any other feedback, feel free to reach to us anytime.
Wow, that sounds really American.
No, it said reach out. He left out the out, but still.
Oh, did I miss it?
And honestly, that's not the way I disabled my notifications on it, but I did it the other way through settings, and
that was just today. So that's fresh and recent feedback.
Yeah, well, they used it freshly. I mean, maybe this was a great app a while back before they. I don't know. I don't know.
Lynn Brindle says rubbish. Where's the Corey video? That's her review.
Corey,
CORRIE.
I guess it's in the
video spelled VIDIO. So I don't know if that's a new hip thing the kids are doing or
we wouldn't know. Really. I find some video very funny from Vicky Mackin.
You were talking about not being a social media user. I have friends at work, or co-workers at work, I really should say. Most of them are all among the millennial end of the spectrum, who apparently cannot communicate without using a cat picture. And it's like every conversation involves a cat or a dog or some meme of some sort. And I've noticed, particularly in Facebook, that's really the only social media platform I engage in, and almost always as a lurker to keep up with my friends and family back home. It's become the thing now that because everybody knows that you have your Facebook muted, and because videos are so annoying, now every video has the captions on it. So now I can't watch a video that I might want to watch, a real genuine video that is of interest to me. I can't turn the captions off because the captions are embedded, because they know that nobody's actually watching the video with the sound on. This is what the world has become.
That's horrible. That's horrible.
Well, and I'll say this. The one thing that a lot of people on Facebook don't understand is nothing is exclusively on Facebook. If you see a video that you want to share to someone who's not in Facebook, all you gotta do is go to YouTube, search the exact description of that video, and you will find it's double posted on YouTube as well, and typically without the captions.
But Dor, you just listed like 4 steps. Who's going to do all that?
Oh, I know. I didn't say it was easy, Mark.
Facebook to me is good for Facebook Marketplace. That's it. And that doesn't even work on for some reason, Facebook doesn't allow Marketplace to work on a tablet. And I've tried alternative Facebook apps, and they won't let those work. The Facebook, just get it together, man. I don't know why you can't let Marketplace work on a tablet. That's just retarded.
Yeah, Facebook is good for me in the sense of, if you don't have the yin, you don't have the yang. We need to have a disgusting respite for screaming, anger, hatred, immaturity, and people with opinions that no one else cares about. So they hang out on Facebook. Oh, and for baby pictures and grandparents.
Yes, it's perfect for kids and grandparents. I did actually hear in a story today where a state senator of ours somehow got talked into putting catfish catching limits in our river. She passed a bill, and so many people reached out to her on Facebook and berated her. She pulled back the bill, and she's not going to try to do that. I mean, they just had a fish kill like 3 years ago. Well, maybe longer than that. A few years ago from some train wreck. So the fish population does not need to be. The Department of Natural Resources did not suggest that this was a good idea. Some guy told her to do it, but she pulled it back, so it's cool.
This may be the only time that the words Facebook and catfish are used in the same sentence and in a positive ecological sort of way.
I know.
Catfishing's something totally different, isn't it, on Facebook?
I was really scared where he was going with that.
I would be okay with a law against catfishing, to be honest with you. That'd be okay.
With water and a hook and that thing, or the other kind?
I guess technically there is already a law. It's wire fraud. Yeah, stop passing laws when we already have a punch.
That's a great movie, though. If you ever haven't seen it.
Okay. So we had an app from a listener. We had an app from Eric. Let's end out the show with one app. Can you do it, Dor? Can you do one app?
Yeah, I'll bring a crap app. An app.
Oh, good, because I was going to feel bad if I brought a crap app for my one app.
This is an app that's been in my queue, and if you were a $5 Patreon person, you would already know this. It's been in my queue for now at least 3 or 4 weeks, and I've been questioning on how to bring this app. This is not a standalone app. This is actually a whole part of suite of apps from a company called AVM GmbH. They have a whole bunch of FRITZ apps, FRITZ apps. I don't trust anything about this app. It's called FRITZ App WLAN. The main reason is I turned on my I can't remember what it's called now. Wireshark, and I loaded this app up, and I watched all the packets coming off my device. There was a hell of a lot of packets going out of my device heading outside of the country. So I don't trust this app, and I suggest no one installs this app. But if you do, I will tell you this. It will tell you a near amazing amount of information about your device, about your connectivity, about your access point, and about other things on your network. It is, I will tell you this, if you're having issues with your Wi-Fi, this is one of the apps, there's a couple out there that can actually tell you a great deal of information, fine-grained information about the connection you have and what's going on around you. But I don't trust this app. I've never heard of this company before. Their icon literally looks like something out of a bad 90s cartoon. If you look at their apps, if you click on their name in the Play Store, all of their apps look the same, and they have a phone app, an app cam, app 2, app media, and then like a My Fritz app. And I don't trust any of these apps whatsoever.
So Wireshark is another app that you run on your phone that tells you when packets are leaving your device and going overseas?
No, Wireshark is an app where I can monitor my network and capture packets either coming from a specific endpoint, going to a specific endpoint, or just traversing my network. And then I can capture them in a log file and post the collection. I can analyze what was sent. It used to be called what?
Ethereal back in the day.
Yes, thank you. This is the tool that when anyone says they turned on their Amazon Alexa and they sniff their network and it's not transmitting the whole time, the tool they use to capture such information on their network is a tool just like Wireshark.
So I'll talk about the app that I use for this very purpose and have been using it for years. Admittedly, I've never put it to the Wireshark test, but it's called Wi-Fi Analyzer from Farproc, Farproc. It does, as far as I can tell, pretty much everything that this Fritz app has done. I've been using it since the early 2000s, really since I got my first Android phone, when I used to be in the business of installing Wi-Fi networks. It was an indispensable tool to me. It is ad supported, so that can be a little annoying, but the tool set is second to none, and I've never had any issues with Russians, confiscating my vote as a result of it.
Yeah, this is my old faithful. This is the one I've used, I think, probably close to, if not as long as you, Mark. And the reason I love this app is I can't get this on any laptop device I've ever had. So like when I'm sitting in my kitchen with my laptop, me as an end user, I don't understand why I seem to get better speeds if I move my laptop 2 centimeters to the left, kind of thing. And what I did, like with this app, was I put it on my media streaming rig, and then I just loaded it up, and I can live watch the signal strength and everything else going on, and then I can physically touch the device, move it a little bit this way, move it a little bit that way, move it a little bit this way until I find that prime sweet spot where I'm getting the best possible connectivity I can possibly get. And if you look at this app, you look at the video in the store, the video from the store is literally from like 2012. That tells you how long this app's been around. But here's one of the things that John Mad Dog Hall says. Sometimes applications aren't updated because they work just fine. And that's what I'll say about this app. What has really changed that much in actual Wi-Fi spectrum in 8 years?
I'll bet I got this app from this show. If you look it up in the spreadsheet, you probably introduced me to this app.
It was from an email on episode 273.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, it's just a good app. And it really did open my eyes about where to place things in my house. Like I heard you don't want to put things too close to a wall, and you don't want to put things too close to a floor or a ceiling. You want it a little bit away from there. And this actually proved the point that I don't want my access point for this behind my television set by the wall, because the signal is literally like a third slower.
Yeah, the perfect place to put your access point is on a plexiglass stand 3 feet tall in the center of the room. That's the ideal location for it. Nobody will ever do that, but that's the perfect place for it.
I've got mine on a beam 2 feet below the floor of the main floor. I don't know. It seems to work. I've never tested though.
Well, gentlemen, I think it's about time to wrap up show 500. We've had some retrospective, great emails. We've had some crap apps and at least one or two good apps, iExit and Wi-Fi Analyzer, although they were both apps from the past. It's hard to bring apps these days that have been around for more than 20 minutes that we haven't already talked about on this show.
That's true. Well, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. There's a lot of apps out there. And there's a lot of crap apps if we want to just do a show on that.
Well, but I used to be able to tap into an RSS feed that published every single app that hit the App Store when it hit the App Store. And when I was getting 2,000 new entries every like minute and a half is when I decided I can't monitor this anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it just got to be too much. I want to just do a quick mention. Number one, Matthew Fuzzle. Thank you. You are the cornerstone of this podcast. If you want to think that you are contributing to the show to make it better, saying thank you, you can think that. If you want to think that you're bribing us every week to keep making content, you can keep doing that. But I can only say thank you, because you are the man. And I will say we have a brand new Patreon to the network who I just want to mention, Jack Pittman. Jack Pittman, if you want to know anything about eBay and how to maximize your profit versus the amount of time you spend on eBay, Jack Pittman is a really nice guy. He's been hanging around Podnutz for more than a couple of years. He just joined the network Patreon for a large amount every month is what I'm going to say. It isn't like it's $100 a month, but he's contributing what I call a large amount every month. So thank you, Jack.
Yeah, thank you.
Eric, do you have any final words of wisdom from episode 5?
I cut you off. I'm going to now openly and publicly bribe Mark. I'm going to pay him a to be disclosed amount of money every month to record extra 10 to 15 minutes a month of dramatic reviews for the Patreons.
All right.
There you go.
I love it. It's a great idea. I'll see what I can, if I can make that happen. I'll have your people call my people.
And we need, and I'll pitch in if we can get Mark to the next meetup of whatever place we get to.
Oh man, I so wanted to go last time, but as I mentioned last week, I ended up in the emergency room that weekend, so we couldn't have gone anyway.
That's a viable excuse. Yeah. Good thing you didn't have your plane ticket bought from Atlanta to Orlando.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't fly there.
He would have drove.
I know. I'm just kidding.
I'm from Texas. You people forget that.
Yeah.
Hey, I can drive for 6 hours and not be out of my state too.
He can drive for 13.
It's just Texans. It's such a travel culture that driving 5 hours for lunch is not a, it's like they have this great steak down in Amarillo. You want to drive out there? Sure. And I have a friend from Rhode Island, and she says that anything over 90 minutes is an overnight trip. I need a hotel room.
That's funny.
All right, Eric, anything you'd like to say for the show, the 500th episode?
I just want to thank you guys. I want to thank all the hosts that have been on this show. I want to thank all the listeners. Just thanks, man. This is a blast. Fulfilling a dream. I always wanted to be a broadcaster, and I get to talk to a lot more people here than I would at my local AM radio station. And here, I'm not judged. Like in the grocery store, they're not going to look at me all crooked for that thing I said, when I'm just talking to you guys. And until we get to that point where everybody starts listening to the Android App Addicts podcast, which we're getting there. We're getting there. I mean, people, like I said at the beginning, people are actually know what a podcast is. So that's step one, baby steps.
All right, and I will simply echo the thanks. You, the listener, are why we do this. I mean, as much as I enjoy spending some time with Eric and Dor, I wouldn't do this were it not for a few thousand of you who were listening on a regular basis. You are, as Bette Midler saying, the wind beneath our wings. You're the reason we do this. So we thank you for that. We appreciate your feedback, all of you who sent emails, app suggestions. That's awesome. We appreciate that. Those of you who decided to kick in some monetary support as well, we can't thank you enough for that. So just a little, I don't know what Dor's metrics are, but I did my taxes last weekend, and on my show, the Geek Rant podcast, for the year, my profit and loss statement came out to, I made about $1,200 for the year. And by the time I split that between my two co-hosts, I was making about $1.75 per hour of podcasting. I don't know what Dor's financials look like, but I'm pretty sure, I hope anyway, that you believe he's worth more than $1.75 per hour of his time. And there's only one source for money, right? And that's you. And we have all the money we would ever need to do this podcast full time. The problem is it's in your pocket. So
that's a good point. I like that.
So if there's no other comments, Dor, I think you said all you were going to say, right? Or
yeah, I'll just say I am so happy I don't have to stop the flow every 20 minutes and inject a completely genuous, disconnected, non-sequential ad for something that I really don't believe in. Again, I listen to 150 podcasts now, and so many of them just completely destroy any flow, any love, any respect with completely fake ads just thrown in. I'm so happy we don't have to do that on every show. The shows on Podnutz that do it, which I did just say do, they do it voluntarily because that's how they want to support the network. And anybody who badmouths them badmouths me. So don't. This is a labor of love, and everybody on this network and in this family called Podnutz shows our love in our own unique, special way. If you support us on Patreon, I owe you everything. If you retweet what I say, I owe you everything. If you just say hi to me once every 6 weeks on Google+, trust me when I tell you you're family. Thank you all very much.
And with that, I think there's nothing less to say but good night, and we'll see you next week on episode 501, because that's it for this episode of the Android App Addicts podcast.
Should be an easy intro to record, Mike. I said Mike again.
Shh.
And I'm not drinking.
We're not supposed to let him know yet. It's not. Oh wait, yeah, no, it is over. Never mind.
I seriously don't know where this is coming from.
All right, so here's my intro.
Okay.
It's episode 500. What more do I need to say? My name's not Mike.
Okay. Hey, if Lakata and anybody else in the chat room tonight, it's your turn to start work on the show. We did our part. You got to do your part. Give us a show title, please.
I said one during the show, and I was going to write it down, and I forgot to, and I was thinking it would be a perfect show title.
I do like the one earlier from Joe that said Foster's Android for Beer.
Huh.
Play Store Playboys. That was a good one.
Play Store
Playboys was good. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know what to say at that time, except I guess.
Well, there was 3 Ps though, wasn't there? Was there something before and after? No, maybe not. I have to rewind real quick here. Maybe I better save my file first.
Yeah, please save your file first. And then let me come here. Do this.
Yeah, you could cut the my name's not Mike, because I don't think that was actually ever during the show. And just
was it?
Show 500. What more do I need to say?
Gotcha.
What number was this? Kidding.
500.
Show number Mike.
Lakata agrees. He says Podnutz, Android for Beer. Oh no, I like Podnutz. Android. That's not. I like what he did there. Podnutz, Android for Beer.
We'll give you Android if you give us beer.
It's kind of like we work this Android podcast for beer, which is almost sort of true for 2/3 of us, maybe 1/3 of us now.
Yeah, it's pretty much just you now.
I drink alone. Well, somebody's got to keep the brewers employed. Yeah, Mark, you were talking about how much you do per hour. I've never had a job I've ever wanted to actually do the math. I've always been salary, and I've never wanted to know how much I put in per hour, and including now. I never want to do that math because it's depressing on every job I've ever owned or been at. Export audio.
Yeah, Miles and Seth worked out to be about $2 an hour. But
that seems fair.
I do a good deal more before and after each show, and so
right.
about $1 per hour.
Well, and to me, I would say that's probably the best thing for you about coming on this show is you just hit record, save, and then
it is. Yeah, I mean
that's the best part for me. I'll tell you what, man. I don't know if I'd have the time to do everything. If this was my network or even this show only, it wouldn't happen. Door's the man.
I know, but I need more time.
Word, dude.
I want to buy an HDMI capture device, and I want to record mini computer desktops shows.
What's the name? What's the name of the famous HDMI capture device? What's the one that everybody did? Huh?
It is either Elgato or Hauppauge.
Yeah, I used to buy some Hauppauge stuff back when I tried to. I used to have cable television going through a Hauppauge tuner card in my that's Windows Me computer. That was the thing, and then I had my DVR on that. Never really worked too well, but it was fun. I remember walking through a Sears store and telling my wife, "Hey, one of these days we're going to be watching TV on computers," and she's like, "Stop smoking so much, man." and she reminds me of that. She's like, "Yeah, I remember. I've always seen these things. I've never been able to capitalize on any of them."
I was having a conversation with one of my students back in 1999 when I was teaching, and he asked me, what do you? Cause it was the year 2000 was coming. He said, "What do you think the world's going to be like, in 20 years?" I said, "Well, I don't know about 20, but in 40 years, I think there will be no distinction between your telephone or your television or your computer screen. It'll all just be a single portal through which all information and video and entertainment flows." I think I pretty well nailed that one. I was expecting it to be in the wall, not in your hand.
Yeah, the whole phone thing really took me by surprise because I thought for sure I was going to have to implant a chip in my hand to keep track of all these payments and all this stuff that my phone's doing now. And I don't have the chip installed and my passwords. When I saw the PC magazine where the guy did it himself, cut a slit in the side of his hand, embedded a chip, and then had the reader in his keyboard. So he just waved his hand over the keyboard, and it filled his password for him. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess that's what I'll go. I'm down for that chip. Okay, I wasn't going to do the chip, but I'll do that one, and I'm just going to do it early before they get too smart. But now that we got the phones,
now it's LastPass and your fingerprint.
Yeah.
And well, okay, here's the real question, Mark. We always hear about data breaches. We always hear about exploits. We always hear about all this bad stuff happening everywhere on the internet. We still haven't had a legitimate Google breach of actual user information that I'm aware of. They've lost internal documents and internal nodes like that, but no customer data has been, as far as I know, taken. And all of the LastPass security issues weren't even severe enough to where they suggested everyone change their password.
Yeah.
So when? Because it's going to happen, right? I mean, LastPass is still it. Even though people hate it, and like Brantley's one of the guys who tries to say LastPass has been breached. It's not safe. It's not secure. Use XPass.
Well, I'll tell you what. I have friends, and I know a lot of people who have been hacked and have random packages show up at their door. I've been fairly liberal on my online purchases over the years, and I've yet to have any kind of data breach on my part. I've never had my identity stolen. I've never had any incidents.
I have
LastPass is only a few years of that.
I have showed up in several databases as a result of the Equifax breach, but that's what it took. It took somebody else gathering information without my knowledge.
Yeah, you had no part of that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I've been
shame
notified
on them for
by a
that.
couple of different people that said, "We found your name in this database." Yeah, me and pretty much every other adult in the country.
Exactly.
I'm not too worried about it.
Right.
Well, you can't, or else you drive yourself mad.
Right.
And then, so my mom goes on Facebook and sees this. I don't know if it was a pillow or something. She ordered one, and it like automatically subscribed her to something. She couldn't cancel it easily. They keep charging her credit card. This is her first purchase, her first I bought her a tablet in January. This is her first interaction on the internet involving money, and she's done. My dad's like all grumpy about, like it's not like that. You went, basically it's like, hey, there's grocery stores all over the place. Why don't you go to the darkest back alley and decide to buy your produce there and just see how that tastes for you? Just because everybody else happens to be hanging out in that back alley, not buying food, but just hanging out. And that I tried to explain to him, like, there's no worse place to spend your money, and there's mostly other places won't end up that way.
Yeah, it's weird how in the digital realm it's so easy for someone to just have like blind faith in things that they in the real world would be like, what?
And I wonder, day one, Facebook is. I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't install it on your tablet because your sisters who also have grandkids are going to tell you how great it is. But Facebook's the worst thing in the world, in my opinion. I know there's necessities for it, but for a person who's not very computer savvy, that's not the greatest thing in the world, even though it seems to be when you're on it.
If it's a target, it is a great barrel to shoot fish in.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see this show title?
Yeah. All is that all one show title, or is that 3?
2 alien stinkers.
It's awfully long to be one, but it would be kind of perfect. I mean, that would just be the description for it. Episode 500. Earth is sewage. Earth stinks. I like Earth stinks. That's good.
I do. That was a great. I like that.
Yeah, I like Earth
stinks. My faith in empiricism was shaken even further. I mean, this was before I had the problem with humans swimming around in sewage. I was in my high school physics class, and we were doing a problem with the refraction of light through a magnifying lens of some sort, right? And the equation was you put in the length of the distance between the lens and the thing being refracted and the distance from the lens to the sun. And my instructor told me to put infinity as the length from the lens from the sun. And I was like, well, it's not infinity. That's a measurable thing that we know. It's 93 billion miles. Why would I put infinity in there? He was like, well, in terms of relationship between the 3 inches between the lens and thing and the lens to the sun, it might as well be infinity. I was like, no, of course not. That's a ridiculous statement. That it's not might as well be. It may be wildly inaccurate to even put 93 billion miles in there, but it's got to be way more accurate than putting infinity. And finally, after I badgered him, he said, well, there's another infinity in the equation that needs to cancel out. I was like, my whole life is a lie. And this is supposed to be science? And I realized then that eternity and infinity are the two things that can blow up any equation. They're the magic elixirs of science. How do you prove evolution? You throw eternity in the mix. Well, that's easy. Eternity. And I lost a lot of my faith in science at that point. And I stopped being a science major because I realized that it was just another form of religion.
Yeah, maybe. I hadn't heard the imperialism. Imperialism? That's not what you're saying. Yeah, I've never heard that word before tonight.
Yeah, empirical, EMPRICAL is.
Oh, empirical. Okay.
Yeah, empirical and empiricism is the art of observation, which is what all science is based on. Dog, either in and out. You cannot lay in the doorway.
Yeah, I went to high school and I loved science, and then by my junior year, they wouldn't let me take any more science classes, so I was done.
Well, I took a couple of semesters of physics classes in college. It was actually calculus that taught me I didn't want to be a physicist.
That'll turn anybody off.
But the more I got to looking at it, the more I realized that this is a religion. There are prophets and priests, and there are sacred rules that can't be broken. And it's all about putting faith in that. And being a man of faith, I certainly don't have a problem with it, but it really struck me as a sham. It's a sham that we can send a Tesla to the Mars with, so it's a functional sham in a lot of ways, but it is in so many ways. There's no substance to modern science.
Well, they both suffer from the same thing. People.
The world would be a lot better place without them.
People and personal goals and blind faith on both sides hurts what the actual core is. Like one of the guys I would literally just love to wrap my hand around his neck is Bill Nye.
Yeah. Bad science.
Well, he's not a scientist.
He's an engineer. He's got a PhD,
Mechanical engineer. which means, oh yeah, he ain't stupid. But some of the stupidest people I've ever had the chance encounters with have graduated from schools with their family names because they assume too much. I thought it was hilarious, and I seriously, Mark, I think Disney does this as a joke. There's an exhibit in Epcot with Bill Nye and Ellen DeGeneres from every bit of 12 years ago. 12, 14 years. I mean, this thing is archaically old. And in it, Bill Nye says, in so many words, global warming isn't real. It's just something that some scientists think could be happening. And I think they literally just keep it around just to show people this is what this guy used to say.
Yeah.
And now he's completely flipped and says completely opposite.
Well, I don't want to. I want to beat on him too much for that, because only an idiot is unwilling to change his mind in the face of new evidence. So, you know, if we hold people to, they have to stick to the thing they said 20 years ago, just because they said it 20 years ago, that's an unfair thing. But at the same time, there did seem to be, you know, in science, you look for correlations. There tend to be a significant correlation between the end of his television career and his advancement, advocation for climate change.
Yeah. And you know, that's why I like.
Oh, you guys are talking about climate change. I'm glad I came back.
Yeah. And that's why I like Richard Feynman, for instance. Like back in the '60s, like late '60s, he even said, "There is no stability. The only constant is change.
Right.
The Earth is always going through a change. The only question is, will we survive through it?" Yeah. I don't know.
One of my friends who's a college professor explained to me one time, he says, you know, being a college professor is all about being published. If you don't get published, you get fired. That's just the way it is. And it's also about bringing in your own funding. And he said he discovered that if he wanted to do a research paper on the population, he was a biologist, the population of the squirrels in Central Park and their health of it, he couldn't get funding. But if he took tacked the words in relation to global warming on it, he got funded every time.
Wow.
So he became a global warming expert because that's what would get him funded.
Right. All the money.
That's
I like money.
All right, guys, I got to go. It's been a pleasure.
Mark, thanks. Have a good night, and good to see you, and happy 500, sir.
Woohoo.
All right, Mark.
See you guys.
You working tomorrow, Door?
Yep. Should be at least. See. Okay, so now copy show apps. I'm gonna have to kill the stream here soon so I can upload or correct the video information. Okay, so that's that. Okay, YouTube. Dashboard. I'm gonna kill the stream. Thanks for coming out, Joe. I don't know how difficult it is, but listening for Patreon users would be great. I don't know how difficult it is, but listening to the after users would be great.
Like the overdose, you know, the before and after stuff on the Patreon. This is the overdose of the addicts. The stuff that spills over. But I think I like the stuff that goes on in the chat room too afterwards. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for coming out, dude. That's really cool. Appreciate it.
Okay, I need this. I just wish I could figure out some automated way to do some of this post-show stuff. It's always a pain. Yeah, I gotta kill this stream or else I can't do this. All right, guys.
See you guys later.
Stop.